Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to begin working on our flaps for the Sonex B. To start, we're going to build a drive rib assembly for the flap. So basically we're going to be turning one of these blank ribs into a completed drive rib assembly. You'll notice that there are countersunk rivets on this, as well as a nut plate that goes on the back side so that we can put a bolt, a 1/4-inch bolt into the hole, and that will control our flaps going up and down. Alright, so before I began this video, I started working on my second rib, and I decided, you know, this might be something that's worthwhile to post in case anybody has questions about it. There are a couple of little gotchas on this, but it's a pretty straightforward part to build. So the first thing I did is I marked lines on the top, on the side, and on the bottom here. Those should be 5/16 from the edge. And I just did 2 of them, one across the bottom and then one going up. These were pre-drilled already, so I basically just drilled through the back plate here. So that's as far as I've gotten at this point. One slightly different thing from most of the parts we've built so far, this hole is going to be the center of this nut plate that goes in the back. And so this nut plate holds an AN4 screw, or a bolt, which is 1/4-inch. The 4 in the AN4 stands for 4/16 of an inch, or a 1/4-inch. So this hole eventually will be drilled with a 1/4-inch drill bit to accommodate a bolt going through the hole, right? And then the nut plate has these 2 rivets that go into it as well to hold it in place. Alright, next I'm going to switch out to a 3/16 drill bit here to drill this hole slightly larger for the nut plate on the back. And then we'll go up to a 1/4-inch now. Add a little bit of cutting oil here. Alright, time to disassemble and deburr. So it might be a good time to stop for a second here and show you. This is where I drew my lines. Like I said, they were 5/16 of an inch. And you just basically need these 2 lines, the one going across the bottom, the one going up the front, and then basically just line up your plate. You can see where the lines are. Hopefully anyway, you just line them up until they match the holes, just like we always do. And then that will put the plate in the exact spot that you want it to be in. Alright, all deburred. So next what I'm going to do is go ahead and put my clecos back in just momentarily, and then we're going to drill the holes for the nut plate that goes on the back of this. The nut plate uses 3/32 rivets as opposed to the 1/8-inch rivets that the rest of this uses. So make sure that you don't, before you drill this out, make sure you don't drill it up to the 1/8 inch to put in your copper clecos. One thing to make note of is that this is a locking nut. It has a nylon ring inside of it, so when you go to put your bolt in place to hold it from moving around, make sure you don't screw it in to the point where it touches the nylon. You're going to want to save that for later when you assemble all the parts together. What I did with the other one is I just put the bolt in, and it was pretty loose. It would move up and down inside of the part here, but that's enough. I just need to keep it centered so that I can drill the holes to place it. Anyway, so let's move on to that part. I'm just putting in enough of these clecos to make sure that it stays in place when I place my nut plate here. So next thing is to take my bolt, put it through the back, screw on my nut plate here. And again, I'm just tightening it in to the point where it's just about to touch the nylon but not actually go into it at all. And this bolt isn't meant to tighten it down, I'm just using it to hold it centered while I drill the holes out here. So switch back to my 3/32, my number 40 drill bit. Use a little bit of cutting oil in that hole. We've got to go through quite a bit of material here. Silver clip go through right there to hold it in place. And so this shouldn't move too much at all. One thing I might suggest, what I found with the other one, is when I went to actually rivet it into place, I think that I'd actually flipped the nut plate upside down, and it made it a little bit tight on one side. I think that these holes weren't drilled exactly in the center of this nut plate. So I'm just going to make a line, a little arrow pointing which way is up. So I know that that little arrow points towards the edge here. Alright, so this part is essentially done. Eventually this is going to just hold this nut in place. It should screw in and out. Try to keep your cutting oil out of the nylon ring in here. It might be worth cleaning out before you actually do a final assembly on this, just to make sure you don't get oil in there. The idea of the nylon ring is to create friction that will stop your bolt from backing out. And if you've gotten any of the cutting oil inside of there, that's going to be diminished, obviously. I'm just going to disassemble this one more time so that I can deburr the holes that I just drilled here. Alright, so the next step is to countersink these holes that we've drilled so that we can put flush mount rivets into it. I have this tool that came along with my kit. It's a countersink tool. It doesn't work very well. I didn't think it worked very well with the first part that it did anyway. The good part about it is that it keeps you from countersinking too far. Basically, you put your drill onto this shaft down here, and it's spring loaded. You can put this up against the part, and as you drill down, it only allows the countersink drill to go a certain distance before it stops, and it, you know, that's as far as it can go. It is adjustable as well, so you can unscrew this little ring down here and then pull this down. You can see, well, hopefully you can see, there's some little teeth in there that can pull apart, and then I can adjust this to either deeper or not as deep for the countersink hole. And then you just tighten up this ring again, and that locks it into place so that it doesn't skip these teeth and change the distance that you want it to go. What I found works pretty well when we're countersinking these holes is to just grab a couple of blocks of wood to set this up on top of. There is a little centering nub in the tip of this that makes sure that it goes into the hole and keeps itself centered before it starts to actually drill the countersink hole. That goes a little too far to go straight into this without stopping, so you need to have a little bit of a hole underneath for it to go into. So that's what the two pieces of wood here are for, that I can actually push this down without bumping into something on the bottom. The best way to measure this, obviously, is to grab yourself a rivet. There's my countersunk hole. I probably need to go just a hair deeper than that, but what I actually prefer to do is have the tool begin the hole, and then I go in with my deburr tool to clean up any excess. Alright, so the holes are all countersunk to some degree. Now I'm just going to go through and clean them up with my deburr tool. I find that it's better to do it by hand. Alright, I'm going to test fit our rivet inside of there. Each of the holes seems like they're about right. That one's probably a little too... it's pretty good. I thought it was going to be a little bit too deep, but it's not. Looks good. That one maybe a little bit too deep. That one definitely is just a smidge. Let's go a little deeper. There we go. Looks good. I'm just going to clean up because it's a little dirty looking in there. Pretty good. Pretty good. Alright, so that's the part. It's been countersunk apart from these smaller holes here, which like I said, I'm just going to do with my deburr tool, not with the other tool. So it just takes a little while of grinding away with my deburring tool. And you don't have to go very deep for these smaller rivets either. Still need to go a little farther, but it's pretty close. There we go. Looks pretty darn good. A little farther on this one. Yep, that looks pretty good. Alright, and then what I like to do is just run this over the top of my Scotch-Brite pad here. Kind of clean up the front end a little bit. So it looks a little like that, but it kind of took care of any imperfections that were on it from the drilling tool. Alright, looks pretty good until I touch it again. Put my fingerprints on it. Right, so the next step is to go ahead and coat these with a little bit of primer. I'll wipe this down a little bit this side as well with the Scotch-Brite pad here. So we're going to just spritz some paint on there, and then we'll rivet it all together again. So I'll be back in a minute. Alright, I've painted both sides of both of these parts. I'm just now going to start clecoing them together, and then we'll be ready to pull some rivets. Making sure I'm orienting this nut plate here the right direction. The air is pointing that direction. Just holding that in place there with one, and then I'll put the rivet in the other side. There's the first rivet pulled. Can still turn the nut, so that's good. Alright, nut plate's in place. Bolt can still easily turn, so that's pretty well done. I'll just go ahead and start putting in the rest of these rivets that are the 1/8 inch flush mounted ones here. Alright, here goes the last rivet. And here we go. Alright, well there we have it. We have 2 drive rib assemblies for our flaps that we'll work on next. Hopefully this has been beneficial to you. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit in the shop, and we'll see you next time. If you feel inclined, feel free to click the subscribe button and follow along as I build this Sonex B in my garage. We'll talk to you soon.